On August 19, 1944, deep within the subterranean bunkers of the Führer Hauptquartier Wolfschanz in East Prussia, General Oberst Alfred Jodl presided over a review of the rapidly deteriorating Western Front. The Allied breakthrough from Normandy was undeniable, yet Jodl and the Wehrmacht High Command saw not disaster, but a predictable, looming logistical failure. German military science, perfected during the initial Blitzkrieg campaigns, provided an ironclad calculation. Patton's spearheading Third Army had stretched its supply lines over 400 miles from the invasion beaches. Jodl understood the mechanical tyranny of modern warfare. An advancing armored division required a staggering 150,000 gallons of fuel every 24 hours. The American, he concluded, had simply outrun their ability to sustain combat speed. Their tanks would soon grind to a halt, offering the Wehrmacht precious time to consolidate their defenses along the Seine River line, perhaps holding until the arrival of winter weather. What Jodl's experienced staff failed to anticipate was the sheer, audacious scale of the American response. Just 125 miles from the projected halt line, an endless, unprecedented convoy was already rolling eastward. This was the Red Ball Express. 5,958 trucks, their headlights defiantly blazing in violation of standard blackout doctrine, hauling 12,500 tons of critical supplies every day. This logistical operation, conceived and executed with a speed and volume that German military doctrine had deemed impossible, was about to shatter every assumption about mechanized warfare. The supposed immobilization was a fantasy. Within 72 hours, Patton's fuel tanks crashed through German positions at the Seine. Within a week, Paris was liberated. Within a month, the Third Army stood poised at the German border. The confidence of the German general staff in American logistical collapse stemmed from painful, hard-won experience. The Wehrmacht had pioneered combined arms warfare, but their own advances had repeatedly foundered when supply failed to match tactical success. The catastrophic campaigns in the East served as a bitter precedent. The advance into Russia stalled not primarily due to Soviet resistance, but because of the simple inability to supply forces across vast distances. German trucks failed on Russian roads, and the reliance on horse-drawn wagons, still accounting for 80% of military transport, could not keep pace with the swift Panzer spearheads, while railway gauge differences meant vital material piled up hundreds of miles from the front. General der Panzertruppe Heinrich von Luttwitz, slated command of 47th Panzer Corps in September 1944, articulated this prevailing belief in July. The Americans faced the same logistical impossibility we face in Russia. Their mechanical advantage becomes a disadvantage. Machines require fuel, ammunition, parts. The Wehrmacht's finest minds were about to receive a profound lesson, delivered by 23,000 truck drivers, 75% of them African-American soldiers, who transformed a one-way highway into the most effective military supply conduit in history, redefining the very nature of modern industrial warfare. The relentless momentum of Patton's Third Army, an astonishing advance of 400 miles in barely 30 days, had reached a historical breaking point. Logistical paralysis. German intelligence, tracking American consumption with meticulous precision, understood the arithmetic of collapse. A single Sherman tank consumed fuel at an unforgiving rate of 0.5 miles per gallon on roads, a figure that plummeted dramatically cross-country. The daily necessities were gargantuan. An infantry division demanded 700 tons of supplies, while an armored division required 1,000 tons. Patton commanded 12 divisions surging forward across a 60-mile front. The calculation was chillingly irrefutable. Sustaining the advance required 12,000 tons daily, all of it transported 400 miles from the Normandy beaches over shattered roads and a transportation infrastructure systematically ruined by the retreating Wehrmacht. General Major Siegfried Westphal, soon become Chief of Staff to Field Marshal von Rundstedt, delivered his verdict on August 20th. He calculated that even assuming the Americans possessed unlimited trucks, perfect roads, and an impossible zero rate of mechanical failure, they could not sustain Patton's spearhead for more than another 48 hours. Physical laws, Westphal concluded, remained inviolable, even by the might of American industry. Yet, on the afternoon of August 25, 1944, at 2 p.m., in a requisitioned French chateau near La Haye, Lieutenant Colonel Reliant of the Motor Transport Service faced a room of deeply skeptical officers. The data they presented was stark. Patton's Third Army was consuming resources at a speed and volume unprecedented in military history, shattering every established logistical plan. Traditional supply chains, the slow resurrection of railway transport, scheduled convoys and depot distribution, had utterly collapsed under the strain of the rapid pursuit. Ayers delivered the radical answer. Gentlemen, we're going to establish a continuous, one-way highway from Cherbourg and the beaches directly to the front lines. Every vehicle will operate 20 hours out of 24, halting only for essential fueling and emergencies. We will move a minimum of 12,500 tons daily. The name was borrowed from the Lexicon of American Railroading. A red ball freight signified an express shipment granted absolute priority over all other traffic. The Red Ball Express would operate under the same principle. Absolute priority, no delays, no exceptions. The technical specifications defied both German prediction and conventional military doctrine. It required 2 parallel one-way highways, one dedicated solely to loaded trucks moving forward, the other for empties returning. Operations would run 24 hours a day, abandoning strict blackout discipline, with headlights blazing. The no-stop policy permitted halts only for fuel or mechanical failure, demanding 5-minute convoy intervals and a sustained average speed of 35 miles per hour. Military police checkpoints were established every 50 miles, tasked with removing any vehicle falling below 25 miles per hour, while mobile maintenance units kept the essential flow moving. Colonel Charles O. Thrasher, commanding ADSEC, Advanced Section Communication Zone, reviewed the projected figures with disbelief. We require 140 truck companies, a minimum of 5,958 vehicles, operating at a 90% availability rate. That is impossible by any logistics textbook ever written. Nevertheless, within a breathtaking 36 hours, the impossible was operational. On August 26, 1944, drivers from the 3,916th Corps Master Truck Company climbed into their cabs, initiating the greatest supply effort of the Western Front. The war machine required continuous feeding, a task executed by drivers loading their GMC CCKW 2.5-ton trucks, the ubiquitous deuce and a half, with vital 105mm artillery shells destined for General Patton's advancing guns at Melun, 300 miles to the east. The stark demographic reality of the Red Ball Express would have utterly confounded German racial ideology. Of the 23,000 drivers eventually dedicated to the route, approximately 75% were African-American soldiers serving within a rigidly segregated military structure. These were the men denied basic civil rights such as dining in white restaurants or utilizing public white facilities across much of the United States, who were nonetheless entrusted with maintaining the momentum of America's most celebrated white general. Within hours of activation, the drivers forged their own necessary culture, painting defiant slogans onto their vehicles. Patton's Blood Bank, Hitler, Here We Come, and Detroit to Berlin Express, and implementing merciless traffic rules designed for sheer velocity. Slower vehicles were instantly forced off the road. Mechanical failures were summarily pushed into the ditch, and any truck dropping below 20 miles per hour was designated a roadblock. By August 28th, German reconnaissance units began transmitting reports detailing an unprecedented logistical audacity. Units from Aufklärung 116, position overlooking the main Red Ball corridor, radioed back. Continuous vehicle column. Headlights visible for 20 kilometers. No spacing, no blackout discipline. Estimate 1,000 vehicles per hour. Americans have abandoned all military precaution. This operational recklessness constituted a profound violation of established German military doctrine. Headlights operating at night invited devastating air attacks. Continuous, dense columns presented ideal artillery targets, and the absence of spacing meant that a single disabled vehicle could instantly paralyze an entire convoy. Yet, the Americans remained seemingly unconcerned. General Major Lieutenant Edgar Feuinger, commanding the 21st Panzer Division, personally observed the Red Ball Express from concealed positions on August 30th. His subsequent report to Army Group B headquarters conveyed a growing sense of alarm. The enemy operates a supply system beyond our comprehension. Vehicles pass at 30-second intervals, day and night, without pause. They do not hide, do not disperse, do not follow any rules we understand. It is not military science. It is mass production applied to warfare. The German command failed to grasp that American logistics operated on fundamentally different axioms. Where German doctrine prioritized concealment and conservation of material, the Americans relied upon sheer volume and redundancy. They assumed a 20% mechanical failure rate and planned their vehicle rotations accordingly, favoring continuous improvisation over strict adherence to military procedure. The resulting statistics achieved by the Red Ball Express defied German calculations of what was logistically possible. During the first week, August 25th to 31st, 1944, the operation delivered 89,939 tons of supplies, averaging 12,848 tons daily. Utilizing 5,958 trucks, making 1.5 trips across the 686-mile round-trip distance. The sheer scale of the operation defied conventional military understanding. The Red Ball Express, a relentless river of steel and rubber, demanded an almost unimaginable resource flow, a daily consumption of 300,000 gallons of gasoline solely for its own operational needs. When German logistics specialists intercepted American documentation detailing these figures, they were instantly dismissed as hyperbolic propaganda designed to mislead. Yet, these numbers were not only accurate, they were an escalating metric of Allied momentum. By September 5, 1944, the Red Ball Express had established a logistical rhythm that German officers, many of whom still relied on horse-drawn wagons for 80% of their transport capacity, considered mathematically impossible. From a western terminus, convoys departed with metronomic precision every 5 minutes, typically comprising 67 vehicles, each hauling a standard load of 5 tons, frequently overloaded to 7. Covering the 350-mile one-way distance required an average of just 14 hours, followed by a rapid 2-hour turnaround at either end. At any given moment, 5,000 vehicles were in constant, grinding motion. This relentless pace forced a generation of innovations hourly, as drivers and mechanics solved logistical problems that German military science had long deemed insurmountable. With approximately 1,800 trucks breaking down daily, mobile maintenance units became frontline surgical teams. Mechanics developed a brutal roadside triage system. 15 minutes to fix a vehicle or push it immediately off the road. Parts were ruthlessly cannibalized from trucks deemed irreparable, and using mobile cranes, entire engines could be swapped out in a remarkable 45 minutes. When the designated Red Ball route inevitably became congested, drivers improvised alternate paths, blurring the lines between military procedure and sheer necessity. They commandeered French buses to rapidly move personnel and free up critical cargo trucks. They even borrowed disabled German vehicles, swiftly painting them olive drab and pressing them into immediate service. Where bridges lay destroyed by bombing, they constructed bypasses, using the rubble from nearby devastated buildings as foundational roadbed. The Germans, observing this chaotic yet productive system, were unable to integrate it into their rigid doctrine, which emphasized careful planning, strict maintenance schedules, and adherence to proper procedure. The Americans violated every established principle, yet their system accelerated rather than collapsed. The most stunning revelation for German observers concerned American fuel management. The Red Ball's daily consumption of 300,000 gallons exceeded the total allocation many German armies received for all operational purposes. The secret lay in a parallel engineering marvel, Operation Pluto, pipelines under the ocean, which had successfully laid fuel lines across the English Channel. By September 1944, fuel flowed through these undetected underwater pipes. Forward fuel dumps were rapidly established every 25 miles along the entire Red Ball route, serviced by their own parallel tanker convoy system, guaranteeing no vehicle waited more than 10 minutes to refuel. General Major Walter Lemmet, observing the scale from aerial reconnaissance photographs, offered a chilling assessment. The Americans have fuel dumps larger than our entire strategic reserves. They burn more gasoline moving gasoline than we allocate to entire Panzer divisions. This isn't war as we understand it. It's industrial overflow. The Red Ball Express was not merely supplying front. It was redefining the very parameters of modern warfare. German military doctrine, meticulously calculated, stipulated that an armored division could sustain a maximum daily advance of 20 to 30 miles under optimal combat conditions. Yet, the divisions under General George S. Patton, continuously fueled and supplied by the colossal effort of the Red Ball Express, shattered this assumption, averaging an astonishing 40 to 60 miles daily for weeks on end. The sheer velocity of the Allied thrust peaked dramatically on September 1, 1944, when the 4th Armored Division executed a 35-mile push during morning operations, paused briefly for a seamless resupply. Red Ball trucks waiting precisely with fuel and ammunition, and subsequently advanced another 32 miles in the afternoon. This unprecedented 67-mile single-day advance rendered German defensive planning obsolete, having been premised on a maximum 30-mile daily penetration. Reports flowing back to General Oberst Heinz Guderian in East Prussia were met with immediate skepticism. The architect of the Blitzkrieg initially dismissed the figures, stating that no armored force could sustain 60 miles daily for a week. Mechanical failures alone would prevent it, labeling the reports as propaganda or misidentification. However, the confirmation arrived through intercepted American radio traffic. More profoundly disturbing for German commanders was the realization that the Americans were broadcasting their positions openly, without code, a display of supreme confidence in their ability to move faster than the Wehrmacht could possibly react or counter. By September 5, 1944, German intelligence had compiled comprehensive reports on the Red Ball Express, revealing implications catastrophic for Wehrmacht planning. Every assumption about American industrial capacity and military capability required immediate revision. The report contained observations that actively defied established German military science. Americans wasted vehicles prodigiously, abandoning damaged trucks rather than undertaking repairs. Drivers operated on powerful stimulants for days, violating every principle of personnel management. And a complete disregard for camouflage discipline made the entire system vulnerable, though the expected air attack never materialized. Mechanical failure rates sometimes approached 30% daily, yet were simply overwhelmed by redundancy, supported by a fuel consumption rate that would financially bankrupt any European military. Field Marshal Walter Model's somber response captured the growing desperation. If these reports are accurate, we face not a superior army but a superior civilization. They make no effort to hide because they don't fear us. They waste resources because they have infinite resources. We cannot defeat this with military tactics. Behind this logistical miracle, the Red Ball Express drivers paid a severe physical price invisible to German observers. Men operated for up to 72 straight hours, often hallucinating from sheer exhaustion and the effects of benzodrine. During the Express's operational period, accidents claimed the lives of 300 drivers. Trucks colliding in fog, overturning on damaged roads, or burning when overheated engines ignited. Yet, morale remained extraordinarily high. These crucial drivers, predominantly African Americans who were denied equal rights at home, understood the history they were forging. With every mile driven and every essential ton delivered, they were proving Hitler's core racial theories fundamentally false, providing eloquent and undeniable testimony to the Red Ball Express's ultimate strategic impact. The logistical torrent unleashed by the Allies had a profound psychological impact. As early as September 1944, captured German officers articulated this shock. Hans von Luck, taken prisoner during the rapid advance, confessed to interrogators, "We knew we'd lost when we understood your supply system. You violate every rule. You waste fuel, abandon vehicles, and exhaust drivers, yet succeed through sheer volume. You've industrialized warfare beyond our comprehension." This realization was devastating. Wehrmacht soldiers, often reduced to rationing 3 rounds per rifle, listened helplessly to the ceaseless drone of American motors all night, every night, a cacophony signaling endless fuel and millions of replacement rounds. The sound itself became a relentless form of psychological warfare. The sheer technical superiority of the American logistical apparatus astounded German engineers. The backbone of the system was a ubiquitous GMCC CKW 2.5-ton truck, affectionately known as a Deuce and a Half. It represented the pinnacle of American mass production perfection. General Motors produced over 500,000 of these vehicles by the war's conclusion, a number exceeding the combined total of all truck types possessed by the entire German military. These trucks featured innovations that the Axis had scarcely implemented. All-wheel drive was standard, not an exception. They incorporated automatic tire inflation systems, robust waterproofing allowing for 30-inch fording depths, engines designed to run reliably on low-quality fuel without complex modification, and cabin heaters that actually function effectively in the harsh European winter. More stunning than the technology was the American maintenance philosophy itself. Where German logistics dictated meticulous rebuilding of worn engines, the Americans simply replaced them with new units. Where German quartermasters rigorously rationed every spare part, Americans discarded entire vehicles for minor mechanical problems, treating them as disposable assets. While the Wehrmacht relied on a limited cadre of highly skilled master mechanics, the U.S. Army deployed thousands of competent general mechanics capable of performing 80% of necessary field repairs quickly. As the front lines rapidly shifted eastward, the Red Ball Express demonstrated an adaptability and speed that utterly stunned German planning officers, who were accustomed to weeks of preparation for any major logistics adjustment. When the original primary route to Chartres proved insufficient, the Americans created entirely new Red Ball Express extensions virtually overnight. The White Ball Express connected Rouen to Paris. The Green Diamond linked Sherburne to vital railroad transfer points. The Red Lion ran from Bayeux to Brussels, and the ABC route spanned Antwerp, Brussels, and Charleroi. Each of these complex new corridors became fully operational within 48 hours of conception. The Americans simply painted new route markers, assigned the necessary truck convoys, and started rolling. Compounding the German defeat was the uncomfortable ideological reality presented by the drivers themselves. The predominance of African-American soldiers in the Red Ball Express created profound cognitive dissonance for German racial theorists. Nazi ideology declared black people inherently inferior, incapable of technical tasks, and lacking initiative. Yet, these very drivers were executing logistics miracles that the vaunted German forces could not possibly match. The African-American soldiers keenly understood this irony. Knowing what the Nazis preached about their capabilities fueled their determination, driving them even harder. Every mile covered, every ton delivered, served as tangible proof that Hitler's racial pseudoscience was false. They were fighting racism with truck keys, defeating Nazi ideology through undeniable superior performance. Some German prisoners, compelled to work as laborers loading the Red Ball trucks, found their ingrained worldview shattered by working alongside these highly proficient African-American soldiers. The Red Ball Express was a logistical marvel, executed by African-American sergeants who often calculated weight distributions with greater speed and precision than the German engineers they were fighting. Engineers whose own propaganda had grossly misinformed them about American racial capabilities. To sustain the relentless Allied advance, the Red Ball required an infrastructure the Wehrmacht deemed impossible to construct under active combat conditions. American military engineers defied these calculations, building or reinforcing 40 bridges, establishing 15 major fuel depots, creating 26 maintenance stations, and constructing 8 temporary cities designed solely for drivers, all executed while the convoy operation was already running at full capacity. German forces deliberately destroyed the bridge at Mani to shatter American logistics, calculating that replacement would demand a minimum of 6 weeks. Yet, American engineers erected a temporary structure in a mere 14 hours. Red Ball convoys, momentarily diverted by hastily bulldozed bypass roads, suffered only an 8-mile detour. German observers watched this construction with astonishment. No detailed blueprints, no planning meetings, simply immediate, aggressive action. The Americans built faster than the Germans could destroy, manifesting critical infrastructure overnight across the fields of France. This logistical speed translated directly into overwhelming battlefield dominance. One Red Ball achievement particularly stunned German artillery officers: ammunition supply rates that dramatically exceeded their highest theoretical calculations. American artillery units enjoyed a luxury no German force had seen since 1942, the ability to fire without restriction. During the brutal reduction of Metz fortifications in September 1944, the XDX Corps artillery expended an astonishing 100,000 rounds in just 24 hours. The Red Ball Express delivered every single round, plus a 20% surplus. By comparison, German artillery defending Metz was strictly rationed to 50 rounds per gun per day. This disparity was absolute. While American guns fired continuously for hours, German officers calculated that such continuous bombardments required 50 truckloads of ammunition per hour, a rate the Red Ball provided without fail. The Red Ball Express consumed vehicles at a rate that would have paralyzed any other military force. By late September, mechanical attrition reached staggering proportions. The average operational vehicle life was reduced to 10,000 miles, compared to a normal 30,000. The daily deadline rate reached 30% of all vehicles, necessitating the replacement of 500 engines and consumption of 10,000 tires weekly. Over 5,000 total vehicles were destroyed or abandoned. Crucially, the operation never slowed because American industrial production had already anticipated these losses. New ships arrived weekly at French ports, disgorging hundreds of replacement trucks and newly trained drivers, who were rushed into convoys after just 2 days of instruction. German analysis showed the Americans destroying more trucks weekly than the Wehrmacht possessed in France, yet their transport capacity only increased. They had achieved what the Germans deemed impossible: logistics faster than consumption, demonstrating an abundance along the Red Ball route that fundamentally contradicted years of harsh German occupation witnessed by the French populace. The psychological impact of the Allied arrival on occupied populations was immediate and profound, sharply contrasting with the privations suffered under German rule. Despite strict regulations, the drivers of the Red Ball Express, many of them African Americans, frequently shared their precious rations with the beleaguered French civilians. At every temporary stop, children would gather, and drivers would dispense vital goods, chocolate, cigarettes, and essential soap. This casual generosity underscored a stark difference. Americans freely gave away what the Germans had meticulously rationed and controlled. German intelligence swiftly recognized the devastating propaganda impact of these scenes. Reports confirmed that French civilians now viewed American victory as inevitable, citing the endless truck convoys as undeniable proof of industrial might. Consequently, resistance activity surged by an astonishing 400% along the Red Ball routes. Populations that had grudgingly accepted the Wehrmacht's occupation now actively and violently opposed it. In early September 1944, the relentless pace of Patton's Third Army created the Red Ball Express's greatest operational challenge. The advance had stretched the supply chain so thin that maintaining the necessary tonnage became almost impossible, with the round trip now exceeding 700 miles. Drivers, pushed past exhaustion, were collapsing, and vehicles were disintegrating under the strain. German intelligence detected the weakness instantly. General der Panzertrupp Otto von Manchefeld reported on September 8th, American supply lines showed definite signs of collapse. Convoy intervals have increased from 5 to 15 minutes. Vehicle speed has drastically decreased. This is our opportunity. Yet, American logistical adaptability once again defied German expectations. Within a mere 72 hours, the Red Ball Express executed a massive reorganization. They created intermediate transfer points, dramatically cutting individual runs to 350 miles, implemented rigorous driver rotation systems, established forward maintenance bases, and doubled the number of assigned vehicles. By September 12th, far from collapsing, the daily tonnage delivery had actually increased. The supply crisis that should have irrevocably halted Patton's advance instead only strengthened the underlying system. Supplementing the ground convoys, the Americans deployed another logistics solution the Germans deemed impossible: large-scale aerial supply. 47 transport aircraft began delivering critical supplies directly to forward units, each carrying 3 tons of material. On September 16, 1944, Wehrmacht observers counted an astonishing 900 transport flights in a single day, delivering 2,700 tons by air. The Luftwaffe, at its peak effort, had managed only 300 tons daily to Stalingrad and considered that a maximum achievement. The Americans treated transport aircraft like disposable trucks, ignoring fighter escort concerns and fuel limitations. They simply assumed losses and overwhelmed constraints with sheer numbers. The Wehrmacht could not possibly compete with this industrial arithmetic. Crucially, The Red Ball Express operated under command principles that fundamentally violated the rigid German military hierarchy. Junior officers made critical decisions reserved for generals in the Wehrmacht, and sergeants commanded operations larger than those typically managed by German colonels. This radical decentralization baffled German observers, who noted that American logistics functioned without a parent central. The operational paradox of the Red Ball Express was its decentralized command structure. Lieutenants often acted with the autonomy of generals, and sergeants functioned like colonels. While such a lack of central control should have invited total chaos, it instead fostered a dynamic, localized efficiency that the rigidly hierarchical Wehrmacht simply could not match. By October 1944, the advance of reconstructed rail heads finally began to diminish the necessity of the Red Ball Express. An operation initially projected to last a mere 10 days had persisted for 82, achieving the staggering delivery of 412,000 tons of material across 122 million ton miles. As German commanders found themselves fighting desperately on their own borders, they were forced to reflect on the nature of the logistical juggernaut they had witnessed. Field Marshal Walther Model, in his final strategic assessment, crystallized a failure. We were not defeated by American tanks or planes primarily. We were defeated by American trucks. The Red Ball Express had irrevocably confirmed that in the context of modern mechanized warfare, logistics was not merely support. It was a fundamental strategy. Even as the trucks roared, the transition to rail transport was itself a marvel of engineering tenacity. American railroad battalions had reconstructed over 1,000 meters of destroyed French rail lines daily, while the Red Ball was still running, laying new track faster than German demolitions could destroy it, often utilizing captured enemy rail equipment. The final accumulated statistics of the Red Ball Express utterly defied every German calculation of logistical possibility. 82 days of continuous operation, 412,193 tons delivered, 222 million ton miles traversed, a daily average of 5,958 vehicles peaking at 7,000, 23,000 total drivers employed, a consumption of 700,000 gallons of fuel daily, 40,000 tons of ammunition delivered to Patton's Third Army alone, 15 million rations, and 135,000 tons of medical supplies transported. Reviewing these devastating figures in captivity, captured German officers conceded that they had based their calculations on restrictive European precedents. They had multiplied their own best historical logistical performance by 3 and concluded that this represented the absolute American maximum. They had been wrong by a factor 10. Beyond the sheer tonnage and distance, the Red Ball Express achieved a more profound psychological victory. It systematically shattered the German military's faith in its own intrinsic superiority. Wehrmacht officers, who had long dismissed Americans as soft and overly dependent on machinery, watched these same soldiers achieve logistical miracles through sheer industrial abundance and relentless determination. German prisoners of war often stood silent at the fences of their compounds, counting the endless stream of passing Red Ball trucks. Some wept, recognizing the awful truth. Not only could the Americans supply their armies, but they could expend more resources than the entire German industrial base could produce. They were witnessing the catastrophic collapse of their global military worldview, one relentless truck convoy at a time. Furthermore, the immense success of the Red Ball Express forced an unexpected racial reckoning within the segregated American military itself. The operation's viability depended overwhelmingly on the tireless labor of African American soldiers, who were simultaneously denied equal treatment and strictly barred from combat roles. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, visiting the Red Ball operations in September 1944, witnessed this profound contradiction firsthand. His aide, Captain Harry Butcher, recorded the moment. The general stood watching. A commander witnessing drivers, many of them men of color, operating for 20 hours straight, recognized a profound strategic truth. He declared, "These men are winning the war as surely as any infantry. We need to reconsider many things." This undeniable logistical success created immense pressure for integration, contributing directly to the formal military desegregation that followed 3 years later. The African-American soldiers of the Red Ball Express had proven in the crucible of France what they had always affirmed. Given the requisite tools and the commensurate opportunity, their performance would match or exceed any challenge. The logistical war of the Red Ball was their decisive combat, and they won it unequivocally. Across the lines, German racial theorists struggled profoundly to reconcile this operational reality with their deeply entrenched ideology. Consequently, publications dedicated to SS racial science quietly ceased all mention of American logistics operations, finding the evidence too overwhelming to deny, yet too damaging to the Nazi worldview to officially acknowledge. Nevertheless, the lessons were not lost on the German military establishment. Post-war, German military engineers undertook intensive studies of Red Ball Express operations, findings that fundamentally revolutionized logistics doctrine worldwide. They codified the principles. Sheer volume overcomes localized inefficiency, mechanical redundancy eliminates critical vulnerability, decentralized execution enables extraordinary speed, and relentless standardization multiplies capability. Crucially, the operation demonstrated that human endurance, while finite, was far higher than previously assumed. General Franz Halder, the former chief of the German General Staff, encapsulated this realization in 1950, writing, "The Red Ball Express proved logistics determined strategy, not vice versa. Americans understood this. We learned it too late." Among the 23,000 drivers who defined the Red Ball, individual stories of profound heroism emerged, acts the Germans found incomprehensible within their rigid military framework. Military records verified accounts, such as that of Corporal John L. Houston, who drove continuously for an astonishing 48 hours, delivering vital ammunition to the 2nd Armored Division at Cambrai, falling asleep at the wheel 3 times, yet immediately continuing after being revived by fellow drivers. Similarly, Private Booker T. Washington's truck caught fire from overheated brakes while carrying critical medical supplies. Ignoring standard operating procedure, which mandated abandonment, Washington drove the burning vehicle 2 miles to a field hospital, leaping from the cab just as the flames reached the interior. The supplies salvaged saved wounded soldiers from both armies. These thousands of verified accounts revealed the fundamental difference in American military culture to German observers, a system prioritizing individual initiative, calculated risk-taking, and mission accomplishment above strict regulatory compliance. Desperate to replicate this logistical dominance, German forces attempted to create their own version of the Red Ball Express in late 1944. Operation Greif, executed during the Battle of the Bulge, included ambitious plans to utilize captured American trucks to establish rapid German supply lines. The effort failed immediately. German drivers could not maintain American operational speeds. German mechanics lacked the training and parts to rapidly repair American equipment. And German fuel supplies could not sustain the high consumption rates. Most fundamentally, German command could not replicate the aggressive American attitude rooted in the assumption of unlimited resources. Obstany, the commander of the operation, reported the inevitable systemic collapse. The inherent disparity between German and American military logistics was starkly revealed in small engagements. When Axis forces captured 50 American trucks, 30 were rendered deadline within a week. While the Wehrmacht attempted arduous field repairs, the American response would have been immediate replacement. This fundamental difference, a reliance on repair versus a torrent of industrial replacement, explains the ultimate defeat of German logistical systems. The winter of 1944 to 1945 provided the Red Ball Express's most definitive trial. Freezing rain, relentless snow, and sheets of ice should have paralyzed wheeled transport. Indeed, established German doctrine declared that wheel logistics became functionally impossible below -10 degrees Celsius. Yet, the Red Ball Express continued its relentless advance. Drivers meticulously wrapped chains onto tires, poured vital alcohol into radiators to prevent catastrophic freezing, and kept the crucial supply lines moving. While operating speeds plummeted from 35 to 15 miles per hour, the tonnage delivery remained unbroken. German intelligence observers noted ice-covered convoys pushing through blizzards that had successfully halted entire panzer divisions. The Americans had forged a logistics system designed not for elegance or efficiency by European standards, but for sheer, brute force functionality, operating regardless of extreme weather, punishing terrain, or enemy engagement. It was, simply put, unstoppable. In May 1945, captured German logistics officers were mandated to undertake a comprehensive study of Red Ball Express operations for historical record. Their collective conclusions were unanimous and devastating to the traditional pride of the German military machine. General der Infanterie Friedrich Schultz summarized a shocking realization. The Red Ball Express represents a form of warfare we never imagined. Americans created a temporary civilization. Thousands of men, thousands of vehicles, millions of tons of supplies that existed only to feed armies, then instantly dissolved when no longer needed. We built permanent infrastructure over years. They created superior temporary systems in days. The most penetrating analysis, however, came from General Hegderian, often cited as the father of German armored warfare. He reflected, "We invented blitzkrieg, but never solved its fundamental limitation, logistics. Americans solved it through an industrial excess we deemed impossible. The Red Ball Express was not merely a supply line, but a flowing river material that ultimately drowned our forces." The operational cost of the Red Ball Express totaled approximately $100 million in 1944, a figure encompassing destroyed vehicles, massive fuel consumption, road damage, and French claims for compensation. German staff officers, inherently conditioned to manage profound scarcity, found this expenditure incomprehensible. Yet, for the Americans, this was considered a remarkably inexpensive investment. The operation directly enabled the capture of 400,000 German soldiers, facilitated the rapid liberation of France, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and is estimated to have shortened the war by half a year. Given that each day of conflict cost the United States $250 million, the Red Ball Express paid for its entire existence in a single day of shortened fighting. Lieutenant General John C. H. Lee, commanding logistics for the European theater, famously framed this expenditure as acceptable overhead. "We wore out 5,000 trucks and 23,000 men to destroy the German army in France. In any previous war, that would be deemed catastrophic losses. In American industrial warfare, it is acceptable overhead." This unprecedented demonstration of mobile, temporary logistics had an unexpected consequence. It would revolutionize post-war civilian supply chains. The return of thousands of experienced drivers, schooled in the crucible of war, fundamentally reshaped the American landscape. These veterans, having mastered the world's largest temporary transportation network, the legendary Red Ball Express, did not merely drive trucks. They engineered a modern American logistics industry. Giants like Yellow Freight, Roadway, and Consolidated Freightways emerged, founded by former Red Ball personnel who seamlessly applied military logistics principles to civilian commerce. Their core lesson, forged on the muddy roads of France, was revolutionary. Volume surpasses efficiency. Speed is superior to perfection, and the relentless 24-hour operation of supply convoys possesses the power to move the world. Military historians universally recognize the Red Ball Express as the decisive logistics operation of the European theater. Without this colossal effort, General Patton's aggressive advance would have stalled, the liberation of Paris would have been delayed by weeks, and German forces might successfully have established entrenched winter defensive lines. This operation validated a core American military doctrine that prized logistics over pure tactics. While German officers meticulously studied Clausewitz and classic battlefield maneuver, American strategists focused on the principles of the Detroit assembly lines and precise railroad timetables. The Red Ball Express irrefutably demonstrated that in modern industrial warfare, the capacity to supply forces determines victory far more than tactical brilliance. The strategic impact was not lost on the enemy command. On September 15, 1944, Field Marshal von Rundert, Supreme German Commander in the West, received comprehensive intelligence reports detailing the scope and scale of the Red Ball Express. After hours of intense study, he summoned his staff. "Gentlemen," he is recorded as announcing, "we confront something beyond military solution. The Americans have engineered a supply system that renders distance irrelevant. Our entire defensive strategy assumed a culminating point where their advancing forces would inevitably outrun their supplies. That point, gentlemen, does not exist. They have revolutionized warfare, and we are fighting the last war." When his operations officer, Oberst Hanspadel, suggested attempting to interdict the Red Ball routes with the remaining Luftwaffe assets, von Rundert's response revealed a chilling understanding of American industrial might. "With what shall we interdict? They operate 6,000 trucks. If we manage to destroy 1,000, an impossibility, they would replace them within a week. We would need to destroy 200 trucks daily merely to match their production capacity. We do not possess 200 operational aircraft in total. Beyond the cold statistics lay the human stories that revealed the true character of the American fighting man to German observers. Drivers, often sleepless for 3 consecutive days, refused relief because they feared their specialized trucks might not make it through without them. Mechanics labored relentlessly in freezing rain to ensure the convoys never stopped rolling. Teenagers, having lied about their age to enlist, were instrumental in piloting these vital vehicles. This multiplication of self-sacrifice throughout the operation created a potent, unintended mythology that systematically demoralized German forces. The Americans' contrary propaganda were not soft. They drove themselves harder than German soldiers drove their horses, yet they did so voluntarily, motivated not by fear but by commitment. The Red Ball Express thus became a form of unintentional propaganda, far more powerful than any planned psychological operation, as German soldiers could hear the low rumble of the convoys, an audible sign of inevitable defeat. The relentless, nocturnal roar of thousands of truck engines, a sound that never ceased, metastasized into a form of psychological warfare. German frontline units routinely reported hearing ghost convoys, phantom streams of logistics that demoralized troops as effectively as actual supply runs. The profound knowledge that American forces possessed virtually unlimited material reserves, while German soldiers desperately rationed their final round of ammunition, created a debilitating despair that fundamentally undermined combat effectiveness. Recognizing this potent psychological leverage, American warfare units began sophisticated broadcasts, projecting the loud, grinding sounds of truck engines toward German lines even when no physical convoys were present. The fact that German commanders documented these fabricated convoys as genuine confirmed the deep psychological damage the Red Ball Express had inflicted. Though rail lines were partially restored, the Red Ball Express was officially discontinued in November 1944. Yet, its operational methods had permanently revolutionized military logistics. The concept of continuous high volume, seemingly wasteful but overwhelmingly effective supply became the cornerstone of American military doctrine. Perhaps the most stunning innovation was the speed of the operation's dissolution. This massive undertaking, involving 23,000 men, nearly 6,000 vehicles, and hundreds of installations, vanished in just 72 hours. Troops were swiftly reassigned, vehicles redistributed, and crucial routes returned immediately to civilian use. While smaller German operations required months to establish and years to fully dissolve, the Americans demonstrated an unparalleled capacity. They built what they needed, utilized it ruthlessly, discarded it, and prepared instantly to construct something superior. When the German generals formally surrendered in May 1945, many candidly cited the Red Ball Express as a definitive demonstration of the hopelessness of continued resistance. General der Panzertruppe Otto von Manschenfeld stated unequivocally during his interrogation, "When we finally understood your logistics capacity, we knew the war was irrevocably lost. You possess the ability to supply armies faster than we could possibly destroy them." The Red Ball Express was fundamentally a weapon against which we had no defense. Furthermore, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, recognized among Germany's most competent commanders, was asked what element of the American forces had most surprised him. His answer was not the tanks, nor the ubiquitous air superiority, but the trucks. The Red Ball Express, he explained, revealed that the United States had successfully militarized its entire societal production capacity. "We were fighting your factories," Kesselring concluded, "not merely your soldiers." The final statistics of the Red Ball Express stand as an irrefutable testament to the sheer scale of American industrial warfare. Over 82 operating days, the total cargo delivered reached 412,193 tons, covering a staggering 122 million ton-miles. This monumental effort required 5,958 trucks daily, peaking near 7,000, and involved 23,000 drivers. The operation consumed 57 million gallons of fuel, wore out 180,000 tires, and resulted in the destruction of over 5,000 vehicles, costing an estimated $100 million. Crucially, military analysts estimate that the supply advantage provided by the Red Ball Express shortened the war by 180 days and directly contributed to the defeat of 47 German divisions. These numbers transcend mere military operations. They mark the definitive moment when warfare changed forever, illustrating how industrial might became the paramount factor determining victory. The Red Ball Express fundamentally inverted the conventional wisdom of war, proving that logistics could determine strategy rather than merely serving it. 50 years after the crucial Normandy landings, this essential truth was formally acknowledged. In 1994, to mark the 50th anniversary of D-Day, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp honoring the Red Ball Express during a solemn ceremony at the National Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. This event finally recognized an operation often overshadowed by frontline combat, yet one that proved equally decisive in securing the Allied victory. Attending veterans spoke with profound pride regarding an endeavor that served as a powerful testament to American industrial might and the sheer force of individual determination against insurmountable odds. These drivers had pushed themselves past the point of exhaustion, navigated crippling mechanical failure, and driven through weather conditions that had halted even heavy armor. The vast majority were black soldiers, subjected to systemic segregation and discrimination, denied proper recognition throughout the conflict, yet they delivered the means of victory, maintaining a relentless pace of 35 miles per hour. The operation irrevocably demonstrated that in the era of modern mechanized warfare, logistics was not simply a supporting function. It was, in fact, the main effort. It was a mobilization that showcased how an industrial democracy could summon resources on a scale that totalitarian efficiency, relying on rigid hierarchy, could never match. The German High Command, which had initially dismissed American logistical capability, was silenced by the reality of 6,000 trucks delivering an astonishing 12,500 tons daily across 700 miles of newly liberated French territory. They had wrongly assumed that Americans would adhere to conservative European military precedent, conserving resources and advancing cautiously. Instead, the United States unleashed a veritable logistics tsunami that ultimately drowned the Wehrmacht in an overwhelming wave of Allied abundance. The success of the Red Ball Express derived not from traditional military genius, but from uniquely American characteristics the Germans consistently failed to grasp: industrial excess, unmatched mechanical aptitude, improvisational skill, and, critically, the independent initiative of individual soldiers, decisions that, in the rigid structure of the Wehrmacht, would have required the direct approval of a field marshal. General George S. Patton, whose Third Army was the primary and most aggressive beneficiary of the supply lifeline, provided the ultimate tribute in his memoirs. He asserted plainly, the truck drivers of the Red Ball Express deserved as much credit for the defeat of Germany as any combat unit. They drove through exhaustion, through mechanical failure, through weather that stopped armor. Without them, the Third Army doesn't move. Without movement, we don't win. They were black soldiers, mostly segregated, discriminated against, denied recognition, but they won the war as surely as any rifleman. History must record this truth. This final, authoritative statement stands as the enduring testament to the Red Ball Express, where 23,000 drivers, overwhelmingly African American, operating 6,000 trucks on a relentless one-way highway to victory, achieved what German military science had declared physically impossible: supplying advancing armies faster than physics should allow, maintaining an operational tempo beyond human endurance, and proving that the side with the most trucks will ultimately defeat the side with the best tactics. The initial German assessment of American logistical capabilities was rooted in profound underestimation, viewing the system as inherently disorganized, wasteful, and ultimately impossible to sustain across the vast distances of a European theater. Yet, the dramatic climax of the campaign, occurring just 82 days after the inception of the Red Ball Express, forced those same generals to confront a devastating new reality. They had surrendered armies sustained not by superior tactical brilliance alone, but by a relentless, overwhelming flow of material. The industrial might of the United States, mobilized through the efforts of 23,000 truck drivers, had effectively neutralized the Wehrmacht's vaunted military excellence. The conflict had ceased to be a simple contest of tanks versus tanks. It had become a strategic battle where logistics dictated the operational tempo, proving definitively that American trucks had, in fact, defeated German tanks. Although the Red Ball Express formally concluded its mission on November 16, 1944, its operational paradigm irrevocably altered the landscape of modern military doctrine. It demonstrated conclusively that in the industrial epic, the ultimate arbiter of victory is not the individual courage of the soldier or the genius of the general staff, but the capacity of the nation to project and sustain overwhelming material force across vast distances. The German commanders who had dismissed American supply lines in August 1944 were signing the final surrender documents in May 1945, having been systematically defeated by the determined, often chaotic, efficiency of 6,000 vehicles moving at an average speed of 35 miles per hour. This operation earned its place among the great military endeavors of the war, not for its textbook elegance, for it was neither, but for its sheer, undeniable functionality. It ensured that the Allied advance remained unbroken, relentlessly pushing the enemy back and proving that the convoy of trucks mattered more than the column of tanks. Even today, the ancient highways of France bear the indelible physical scars of this massive effort. Deep ruts etched into the asphalt by chronically overloaded vehicles, hastily repaired bridges that barely held, and the debris of abandoned machinery testifying to the brutal pace. Yet, the most significant monument to the Red Ball Express remains the acceleration of the Allied victory. By delivering critical supplies that maintained the momentum, the operation shortened the European conflict by crucial months, directly saving thousands of lives. The German High Command ultimately absorbed the hardest lesson of industrialized conflict. The military axiom that amateurs discuss tactics while professionals study logistics was proven true, with the American commitment manifested in the unceasing roar of thousands of engines carrying democracy and destruction down a one-way road to victory. The most poignant epitaph of the German resistance stems from the observation of an unnamed German officer, recorded by a Red Ball driver at the 1994 commemoration. While standing captive beside a Belgian road, witnessing the unending columns of American transport, the officer articulated the fundamental failure of the German strategy. We prepared for everything. Your tanks, your planes, your ships. We never prepared for your trucks. How do you defeat an enemy who has more trucks than you have soldiers? The answer was delivered every 5 minutes by exhausted Americans, simultaneously rewriting the rules of warfare and transforming simple supply into decisive victory. The Red Ball Express had elevated logistics to the ultimate strategy, but by the time the German generals fully grasped this truth, General Patton, reliably supplied by the greatest logistical machine in military history, was already at their gates.